Dawnbringer Book 2, Chapter 9, The End of the Contest. Rolain leads his half-company of archers through the narrow streets of the city, though now they fight not so much with bow as with sword, knife, and axe. For these streets are inhabited by the creatures of darkness, the Druadach, who even with bare claw and teeth sow terror among the people. If these beasts were fully armed, Rolain fears that there would be no chance of victory, for even fighting only with the viciousness of their own bodies, the Druadach are a formidable foe. Soon it becomes obvious that even the hacking of limbs and the piercing of the body does not stop them, but only beheading or puncturing of the heart. About this, Rolain informs his men and calls upon them to fight accordingly. He also adds,
"They are terrible creatures indeed, and they do not fall easily. But there is yet hope, for their range is less than a range of a weapon, and they wear no armor nor protection. Take heart in this, and hew them down."
Along every new street or passage down which the company turns, there are Druadach, 10, 20, or 30, roaming in their bloodthirst or clawing with their hands against the closed doors of citizens' houses. The bodies of any men or women who were unfortunate enough to be out of doors when the Druadach emerged now lie slain in the streets. As they move forward, slaying all the Druadach they encounter as they pass, Rolain learns another thing. Worse than armor is the fear that the Druadach instill in human hearts. For the men in his company to continue in their fight requires a continual surmounting of fear rather than a one-time choice, and on every renewed encounter with the creatures of darkness, Rolain calls out to his men in words of encouragement and hope. And this requires a great deal of him, of his spirit and his heart, and he finds himself becoming so exhausted that the world around him spins. Repeatedly, he must pause to regain his bearings, and to push beyond the sense of disorientation that assails him, finding a path through his own fear and through the cloud of confusion that threatens to engulf the entire city, leading to panic among the population and among the men who fight to defend it. The temple of Niraniel soon echoes with the cries of the wounded and dying, who line the corridors and fill every possible room. It becomes a safe haven for the living too, and the inner courtyard and the sanctuary both are crowded with so many that there is hardly any room to sit. The great doors at the entrance remain tightly shut, except to let in those who seek refuge. And just within these doors stand guards heavily armed to fight off any beasts who try to gain entry. But even more effective than the doors and the guards is the aura of peace that envelops the temple precincts, an aura that causes disorientation among the Druadach, even fear. As they draw near, something happens to them. It is as though they are cut off from the inner voice that commands them to hunt, kill, and slaughter. Instead, they walk around as though confused and lost, bumping into one another, growling in their horrible voices, and then eventually turning away to another street. But there, sadly, they regain their vigour and their lust for death. Seeing this, as she looks out upon the stone courtyard from one of the windows in the corridor, stopping for but a moment as she passes from one wounded person to the next, El-Marié is filled with wonder. Syrian walks past and, seeing her, pauses to turn to her.
You wonder why they turn away from the temple,
He asks.
It is not wonder as in doubt.
She replies.
I am just amazed and grateful.
as you should be,
says Syrian.
It confirms for me that these creatures are nothing but minions of the powers of darkness, powers called of old the Draen. For as they draw near to a place where the power of the Aenean dwells, there is a conflict, light and darkness entering into contest, and the light for the moment proves the stronger.
I just wish that there was more that we could do, or that they could do.
Sighs El-Marié.
For even if the beasts are hindered, they are not stopped. And the darkness still conquers, to the death of many. What can possibly stop the horrors that befall our city and our people this terrible night?
Do not lose hope, my dear El-Marié.
Says Syrian, placing a hand on her shoulder.
Whatever lies within our ability, that let us do. We need to attend to the wounded and to encourage the despairing. Much lies beyond us that can yet turn the tides of battle, though we know it not.
But where is Eldarion?
Asks El-Marié.
I know that it is not to him that you refer, yet he weighs heavy upon my heart nonetheless. Why has he not returned?
What does your heart tell you?
El-Marié does not answer immediately, but pauses and draws in a deep breath, listening to that sound deeper than words, that feeling deeper than ordinary awareness. She begins but falters.
Trust your judgment.
Syrian encourages, squeezing her shoulder gently with his hand.
I feel that he is in dire need, and that his very life hangs in the balance.
She says at last.
He never departed from the palace of the Heros, and there is yet to be found.
I believe that much more is to be found there than only Eldarion,
Says Syrian.
A great evil has dwelt in the court of Glenders for many a year. You know this, as you have felt it. Even Rawlane has felt it, though he did not know how to interpret it. I regret now that I sent Eldarion alone to confront such evil and without warning. I allowed myself to be encouraged by the fact that Glenders himself was favourable to our cause, that he proved a man of greater integrity than I had feared. But I was blinded to other threats, true if less visible, that also dwelt there.
How do you know this?
Asks El-Marié.
Even those without the gift of bearing may yet feel what is beyond normal feeling.
Syrian replies quietly.
The world of the gods is open to us all, and deep acquaintance with the invisible begins to make the unseen seen and the unheard heard, and the hidden ripples at the heart of the universe begin to vibrate against the sinews of the soul that are now made sensitive, permeable to their touch.
So you feel it too?
Asks El-Marié.
I feel certain things that you do not feel, and you feel things that I do not. But yes, I also feel much that you feel, and you much that I sense.
With these words, Syrian sighs deeply, as if hesitant to continue.
I shall go to him.
El-Marié says suddenly, though her words betray no haste or impulsiveness.
We cannot leave him to this fate, whatever that may be. I know it not, though I feel it.
But the danger is too great,
Replies Syrian.
How could you ever make it to the palace unharmed?
I don't know.
She breathes, turning away and looking out the window again. As she does so, the sounds of combat echo in through the window. The deathly cries of the Druidak, and the sound of metal against flesh, and the voices of living men. A moment later, a small company of soldiers appears at the far end of the courtyard, and Rawlane stands at their head.
If anyone would wish to accompany me, It would be him.
says Elmarie. Syrian steps forward and looks out the window as well, and then says,
I do not forbid you to go, but I worry for you. Take care, but make haste. I shall do all I can here, and shall anxiously await your return.
Syrian, thank you.
Elmarie replies, embracing him.
You know that I must do this.
Yes, I do. May the divines go with you.
With this, she leaves the temple precincts, and the guards shut and bar the heavy doors behind her. The company that Rawlane leads, now thinned greatly in number, stands before her in the centre of the courtyard, visibly exhausted and pausing for a moment to recuperate their strength.
Rawlane.
Elmarie calls, running forward.
Elmarie,
He replies, turning to her.
how fares the temple?
The Druidarch have not gained entrance,
She replies.
though little more room do we have for refugees and the wounded. But why are you so far from your position upon the northern wall?
Is it not obvious? I was stationed there in expectation of an assault from outside the city. But now our enemy attacks us from within, as well as from without. Half of my men I left at the north gate. The other half I have led to where you now see us, though many have fallen along the way.
At these words, his face betrays an expression of intense anguish.
I'm sorry.
Elmarie sighs.
Are there any men who wish to seek refuge in the temple?
Rawlane turns back to his company for a moment, and then says,
Aye, there is one. He's badly injured and no longer able to fight.
Then he steps into the group of men and lays his arm around a man whose face is covered in blood and whose torso is horrifically torn in rugged flaps of loose flesh, clearly by the claws of the Druidarch.
Neelis, here you shall seek rest and recovery and find hope to yet live through the night. Thank you for your courage.
The man, weak on his feet, steps forward and almost stumbles into Elmarie's arms. She and Rawlane both catch him and hold him up.
Is it not too late for me?
He asks, his voice frail, almost like the whine of a little child, though betraying deep underneath the courage of a man.
That need not be the case.
Says Elmarie.
The healing vigour of the temple is greater than you yet know.
Then looking at Rawlane, she says,
I will bring him inside, but there is something I want to ask you yet.
What is it?
Where shall you lead your company next?
We have no destination,
replies Rawlane.
We walk through the streets and slay any of these creatures that we encounter.
Then can we go to the palace of the Heiress?
Elmarie asks.
Eldarion is there, and he is in dire need.
How do you know this?
Rawlane asks, anxiety creeping into his voice.
It is hard to explain.
Says Elmarie.
But even you felt the evil in the court of Glenders, did you not?
I did.
Then let us go before it is too late. He needs us. This much I can say with certainty. Will you trust me?
I do trust you, Elmarie.
Says Rawlane.
But you wish to go as well? The streets are a place of horror and death.
Rawlane.
She replies, a mysterious fire in her voice and in her eyes.
It is not a question of whether I go with you or not. It is a question of whether I go alone or whether you also go with me.
I have a promise to keep and a debt to pay.
Says Rawlane.
And since this act is fully compatible with leading my men in this battle, I have no hesitations at all.
Then give me but a moment to help Neelis into the temple, and then we shall depart.
Says Elmarie.
I shall assist you.
Rawlane says, and with this he lifts Neelis into his arms. He says to him,
Loath not to be carried by another man, my friend. You have fought bravely, so allow me at least to do this one thing for you. I look forward with hope to seeing you again in the morning light when some peace has come for us again.
What is your secret intent?
Eldarion asks.
You know that I would not hesitate to die if it meant saving the lives of these people. But you already intended to kill both me and them. Why then this farce of self-sacrifice when I am already in your hands, and my fate lies wholly at your whim? Certainly, you do not need my permission to kill me.
No, I do not need your permission.
Maggot replies.
I can kill you if I please and in the manner that I please. I suppose you can call it a stroke of benevolence, an offer to give your death some meaning.
I don't believe you.
Well then, it is your loss. Shall we revoke the offer, therefore?
What do you gain by my free surrender?
Asks Eldarion.
Free surrender.
Maggot repeats, licking his lips in relish.
Ah yes, free surrender. That is what we all seek, that others will freely surrender themselves to our power. That they will subject themselves to us of their own free choice, because they recognize our might and superiority. So it is with your beloved divinities, is it not? You cower before them because they are greater than you, and their brilliance dazzles your eyes. What a foolish thing to do. At least in my case, you surrender because you actually recognize that I have power over you, power over your life and your death, and power over the lives of thousands.
But what do you gain by my death? What do you gain by any of this?
Eldarion asks.
So very little and yet so very much,
Replies Maggot.
I'm surprised that you do not even know. Your people have grown ignorant and lazy, forgetting both their past and its promises. But we mind not, myself and my kind, for it makes it that much easier to steal from you your future. And I myself gain much from defeating, as we say in our tongue, the Lugbuch Gordas Lug. But I must admit, I am a little disappointed. There is less savor in defeating an enemy who does not even know his true nature than there is in conquering him at the height of his power. But victory is victory, and having you and your people as my playthings, at the very mercy of my hatred, is reward enough.
With this, Maggot turns away and paces across the room, uttering an incantation, a guttural chant with no pleasing melody, filled with dissonant notes, and in a language that fills Eldarion with dread and fear.
Quandas din creixas, burgus mandur, quandas lug dem degas, ergemas candur, quandas dreias candur, anai falteandur. Lorsunas dimendur carles shekranur, mortex in agronis carter ganur. Verdrex, roga promkis, lug bucha. Burverdex kapakamaxor, krinucha, log falti aberuak, eruaki geruak. Lug buch gordas lug, vardas interganur. Lordin krinucha, kar mordga jonanur.
After his incantation has concluded, Maggot turns back to Eldarion and says,
I grow tired of this conversation, and I realize that my mind has changed. Yes, I think that it is time my little offer is revoked, for there is more pleasure in watching you die in agony at my hands whether you wish so or not, tortured by the awareness that there was nothing that you could do to save the lives of thousands of persons who shall be slaughtered this very night.
He then raises a hand, claws poised, as if to run Eldarion through, and says,
Goodbye, Lugbuch.
But at this very instant, the cell door, left ajar, swings open, and a blade passes full through Maggot's torso, coming out from his chest on the other end, clearly having passed through his heart. Eldarion recognizes the blade as that of the Lightbringer, but it does not glow. Maggot laughs even louder now, as if drunk with delight, and, turning his body in a fluid motion, swings with the back of his hand, as if swatting an annoying fly, and Eldarion sees Rawlane fly helpless across the room. The sword clatters to the ground with an echoing clang, and Rawlane strikes the wall so hard that he falls to the floor unconscious.
Poor fool.
Maggot mocks.
Not just any can presume to wield such a blade. I cannot be harmed by the likes of you.
Then, just as he makes a move to turn back to Eldarion and finish what he had begun, another figure enters the room, like a blur of motion in the darkness, and then the face of Elmarie appears in the dim light, the Lightbringer held firmly in both of her hands. Her face, wrought with fear, also shines with resolve.
Leave him alone,
She cries.
If you wish to destroy, then take me first.
Maggot looks at her with haughty delight, but also with rage.
Who are you to defy the Lord of Worms, petty filth?
My name is Elmarie Ciliari of Telonis, servant of Niraniel, and I defy you freely of my own choice, and I do so beyond all doubt and fear.
She raises the Lightbringer high in the air, preparing to strike, but Maggot simply laughs.
You are playing for the fool, little girl,
he says.
The blade you carry is no trinket, no child's toy. Do not interfere in things that you cannot understand. The light and the darkness both are too great for you, and you could never understand how light must confront darkness, must give all that it is to try to overcome darkness, but in the end is destined to fail. That is the destiny of things, that light may flicker for a while yet, and that dark then shall engulf all in endless night.
I know not what lies within me to resist you, but resist you I must.
Elmarie cries, and suddenly a brilliant light bursts forth from the ring upon her finger. Maggot recoils in anguish and tries to shield his eyes from the light. Elmarie, after overcoming her own surprise at this unexpected radiance, leaps forward and thrusts the Lightbringer again into Maggot's flesh. And to her even greater surprise, and that of Eldarion, the sword burns with brilliant blue flame, and the creature of darkness dissolves at its touch.
I shall return,
he cries in a voice that grows distant even as it speaks, and then all is silent.
You are bleeding badly,
Elmarie says, after dropping the sword to the floor and rushing to Eldarion. She seeks a way to remove his chains.
I doubt that I shall die of such wounds.
Eldarion answers.
But Rorlane, please check on Rorlane.
Elmarie nods and goes to Rorlane, slumped as he is against the wall.
Worry not. He is breathing and does not look greatly injured, merely unconscious.
Good.
How shall I remove the chains?
She then asks.
Is there some kind of key?
I know not.
Eldarion replies.
I was unconscious when I was placed here, and woke to find myself as I am now.
And the wounds?
She asks.
I was awake for those.
Oh, I am so sorry.
There is no time,
says Eldarion.
What is happening in the city? I hear it, but have seen nothing.
It is a slaughter, Eldarion, a slaughter.
Elmarie breathes, anguish washing over her features.
The Druidach simply appeared within the city, stepping out from the shadows as if they had always been there. And at almost the same time, the Imperial forces began to assault us from without. We cannot fight on two fronts, and both soldiers and civilians are falling. The temple is flooded with dead and wounded, and yet they die so fast that we cannot even keep up, and to go out and look for them is near suicide.
But you made it here,
Eldarion remarks.
Yes, I felt you,
replies Elmarie.
and we thought that if anyone is able to do something to turn the tides of the battle, it is you.
Not me, but...
sighs Eldarion, and then he looks intently at Elmarie and says,
You wielded the blade yourself. I know not how, but the light channeled through you as it has done through me. And I rejoice in the fact, for without it, I fear we would all be dead.
At that moment, Rorlane awakes with a groan and looks around.
Where is the beast?
He asks.
He's gone.
Eldarion replies.
We know not how, but Elmarie was able to destroy him with the light of the sword. Though I think destroy is too strong a word, I suspect that he has only been dispelled, cast back to his realm, until he is able to return again in bodily form.
He spoke, unlike the rest of the Druidach.
Elmarie remarks.
Why is that?
He is their commander, a being superior to them,
answers Eldarion.
though I do not know what that means.
If their commander has been slain,
Rorlane says, rising to his feet.
does that mean they have ceased their attack?
He said that they only move at his command, so it is possible.
Eldarion says, hope coming into his heart, a weak spark that nonetheless at the slightest sign of truth shall blow into flame.
I still hear the signs of battle,
Says Rorlane.
but they sound dimmer now, more distant. Here, let us get you out of these chains and then leave the dungeons.
With these words, Rorlain pulls a ring of keys from his belt and begins to try them one by one on the manacles around Eldarian's wrists.
Where did you come by those?
Asks Elmarier.
They were on a peg in the antechamber to the prisons. I am sorry. I should have told you that I grabbed them in case something had happened to me.
It is past now, and all has ended well.
Yes, it has ended well, at least for us. But I worry immeasurably for the rest of Ristfand,
says Eldarian. One of the keys clicks in the lock, and the manacle holding his right wrist opens. Immediately, his arm falls limply to his side, and his whole body swings to the left. Elmarier catches him and tries to hold him up, easing the weight on his other arm until Rorlain has unlocked that manacle as well. In only a few more moments, his ankles are free as well.
My dear friend,
Eldarian says softly, embracing Rorlain with a full embrace.
Thank you.
I have a promise and a debt which shall never be paid,
Rorlain replies.
and it is my pleasure to forever be paying it.
He then holds Eldarian at arm's length, looking at him.
And I learn now what happened to the Heras. He and his entire court have been slain. Was it that beast?
Yes.
Eldarian replies.
He was disguised as a man for many years, counselor to the Heras even beyond his other counselors. He is responsible for great ill in the court, and this whole plan has been of his devising.
Then the fire in the ghetto, too.
I suspect it was his doing, and the conflict between Glenders and the Imperial Counselor as well.
Then I am sorry for my suspicions, and the worry that they caused you,
says Rorlain.
You were not far off from the truth.
Eldarian replies.
There was great evil at work in the court of Glenders Medora, but you imputed it to the wrong man.
And I hope that I have learned my lesson.
And I mine.
Rorlain nods silently to this and then changes the subject.
You look terrible. Did that creature do this to you single-handedly?
There is no one else left alive, I fear,
says Eldarian.
Did you see anyone?
No, but we must get you treatment too, and soon, for you have lost a lot of blood.
Aye, but first the more pressing matters.